Good day, everyone. Welcome to the Inverted Orthodoxy Podcast. I am Blake alongside Doug and Kyle. We're pastors at Living Springs Church, and we love answering your questions, which is what this podcast is. You send them in through our website, and then we answer them. And we love faith questions. We love all sorts of questions, and we love exploring our faith and trying to figure out what we all believe in, which is lots of fun. So I guess just before we jump into our first question, we can update week 2. No Frozen yet for Doug.
We are recording these episodes back to back because we're heading into summer with holiday times. So it's been 48 minutes since the last Frozen update. So if I wanted to, and I had it playing on my screen on the iPad during the last recording, I still wouldn't be done it.
I think like book club, I tell people, if you can read a third of the book, you should come to book club because it's probably already going to get through. I think if you hit a third of Frozen, we'll count it.
Well, he's started it a couple of times. I was admitted on the last couple of weeks ago or however.
That's true.
Yeah.
Okay, so the movie's...
Did you watch Olaf Presents, though?
No.
See, that was more... yeah, that's more fun.
I don't like have this yearning desire to go home and put on Disney Plus. The thought just doesn't cross my mind. It's okay, people. It's okay.
To be honest, I hadn't thought about you watching Frozen since we last were together anyways.
Good, because I feel
I
like
haven't
if
thought
that's
about it
what
in
you're
48 minutes, apparently.
if that's what you're thinking about, you need to think about better things.
Oh, man.
Okay, let's...
More important questions.
Let's ask the real questions.
Guys, we're taking questions that came in April.
April 1st.
Flying.
We are killing it.
Yeah.
Only a couple of months behind now. So it says, what is your take or opinion on divine intervention? God stepping in or angels interceding on our behalf to save us from certain things like a car crash, muggings, drowning, etc. in certain situations, or maybe direct us down a different path, etc. And if not, then please explain what you think all these stories could be.
I absolutely believe that this can happen. I believe it does happen. I don't know why it does in some circumstances and doesn't.
Yeah.
But I choose to absolutely believe that God does amazingly miraculous things at times, and I don't claim to understand why those things don't happen in other circumstances.
Yep. My grandmother went to her grave telling a story of driving down a hill in Newfoundland. And if you've been to Newfoundland, there's a lot of hilly roads where her car broke. The brakes were gone. She could not get them to work. And then the car slowed down to a full stop on its own instead of her ended up in a devastating car crash. So definitely have grown up with that story. Continuing, I have had some of my own stories. My brothers and I got lost in the woods at some point. We found a telephone pole, and our logic at those all under 10 age thought, telephone poles, we see a lot of those from roads. If we walk towards those, we'll get to a road. We got to the road from the one telephone pole we were following, looked back, no telephone poles. No idea what had happened there. I believe and feel like I've experienced these things taking place. Again, I will add to what Doug is saying. I don't know why these do or do not happen at certain points, because if they're happening, and if I believe that they do, there's a whole lot of other places I wish they would have happened or could have. And so I will very humbly admit I have no idea why they do or do not happen at moments, because I think there could be a lot more intervention for things that take place in the world, and yet that doesn't. And so I believe in the great mystery while still having many questions around it myself.
Yeah, I think there's just so much, right? So much good that, you know, we hear of stories like that, like saving your grandma, or, you know, you guys as kids or whatever, everybody has stories like that, but also just of the whole supernatural realm. Like there's just the last podcast, we talked about faith and uncertainty. And yeah, like as soon as you start talking about that, people have stories. People will immediately start telling you stories of just supernatural stuff, good and weird, right? But, I've told this story, I think, on the podcast before, my thoughts, again, my twisted thoughts of what I think heaven looks like and, you know, a daily basis. I always think the angels like wake up, eat breakfast together, and then they walk out in line to get their tasks for each day. And the angel that gets like this teenage kid that just got his license, and he's like, oh my gosh, this is going to be, you know, a really hard day today, right? And the other guy's like, oh, I had your grandma at the nursing home, right? He's got an easy day, right? Like it's so many questions.
So do they like work an 8-hour shift, and there's another shift
so.
that gets up for afternoons?
I started with, what do angels eat for breakfast?
Oh, cereal, of course. Everybody knows that.
So if you get like midnights, like you are...
So there's angels who are on probation.
You either get a really easy shift or you get the worst of the worst, because the people who are awake at night
they're
are either
troublemakers.
troublemakers or police officers dealing with troublemakers.
However it works. I just, like, when you hear stories like that, you just think of, I just did in my imagination, I just think of some angels get an easier day than others, or you know.
Why do you assume that grandma in the nursing home is an easy day?
Well, just hear stories, listen to it. It'd be just an encouraging day. That's what I picture.
You think there's no drama in nursing homes?
Well, I don't know. I haven't been in one long enough to experience that. Maybe there is. I'm going to go out on a limb, though, Doug. If you're going to press that question and say, teenage kid with a new license, I'm going to guarantee you is a harder job to look after.
In all likelihood, but I think of a specific young man who years ago attended our church, who was one of the most responsible people I ever knew. And he got his license, and I pulled up beside him at a red light 4 or 5 months after he got his license. And I was like, "You want to race?" And he was like, "I would never." And so I feel like the angels shouldn't be so judgy.
Well, maybe it's like little Timmy, the good kid at church, or Doug, or Blake.
Oh, man. On the other side, I will say, because we've never taken any liberty to discuss further than what the question has asked. With that said, comes the...
I feel like we've already done that with the angels having cereal for breakfast.
And getting their assignments. I'll also say that same belief in a supernatural world and realm also leads to many negative supernatural encounters.
Oh, absolutely.
To admit then things that are tested to as hauntings and ghosts and all those are also evil spiritual entities. Mm-hmm. Maybe they didn't get their breakfast, so they're grumpy that day.
Can we just are these assignments handed on a random basis in your mind? Like you just pull up and you're like the pull out at the deli counter?
That's what I think. Yeah, you just
okay.
Yeah.
So Daniel
runs in contrast to like these people. And again, Facebook's full of it. Like if you want to know your angel's name, like your guardian angel that's with you all the time, that's like a life sentence for those angels. Like they got to deal with that guy for like the rest of his life. At least in my theory, it's just daily. You get a new assignment each day.
Okay. I'm good there. So in Daniel, when the angel is late.
Sorry, Kyle, you tried to move us past that, and I couldn't get past this idea, and I needed more information. I apologize.
No, that's all good. I was going to say, in Daniel, when the angel's late, it's because he had a really bad assignment the day before. Yeah. Got caught up. So could an angel theoretically sleep in on the job and not get assigned your protection?
Yeah, I guess. Luck of the draw.
Okay,
but wasn't Daniel delayed 21 days?
40 days.
40 days?
40 days. He fasted 40 days. So does that angel get overtime? Or does another angel log in and relieve him?
I don't know. Like that's going to wreck my theory now. I got to rethink this.
Does that assignment, does not, obviously in that situation in Daniel, didn't get assigned to the next angel.
It's just faith, guys. We just established that before.
Or does that guy, because he took 40 days, get a bad review? Right?
Bob's going to the bottom of the queue. He can't let him deal with big things again.
40 days to finish his job. No cereal for you.
He's been assigned back to the teenagers. No more international debates for him.
You've been demoted.
I am sorry that I started all this for our listeners. All right, next question.
Right.
When Jesus says not to store up treasure on earth, was that literal or about our hearts? Is saving for a vacation or saving into a pension, or for kids' education, storing up treasure or wisdom? Is that storing up treasure or wisdom because our lives have some huge expenses? What about wanting to pass on an inheritance to our children? If we take it literally, like the early disciples would, we would sell all our belongings, all the excesses, instead of saving. Give it away to the poor, but that doesn't seem very wise. What are your thoughts?
We always have to recognize context. Jesus talks about storing up treasure in heaven in the Sermon on the Mount, in the context of teaching his new disciples how to live into the reality of this kingdom that he announces in Matthew 4, repent for the kingdom of heaven is near, calls his first disciples, and then the beginning of Matthew 5, he's got a crowd. He looks at the crowd, he turns around, he goes up a mountain, his disciples come with him, he sits down, he's like, hey guys, let's talk about what this kingdom of heaven looks like. And so we have to understand that Jesus is not giving a law here that you can't save money. He's offering wisdom in how he's calling his people to live. And the fact is that we spend a lot of time and a lot of energy storing up treasure on earth. And that is the natural way that we are bent. And when we come to Jesus, we very quickly, I think, hear this call, hear this same words that would have been given to the disciples in this sermon that Matthew presents in Matthew 5-7, that is, heaven is near. Remember, heaven is near. Seek first heaven. And so you have to store up treasure in heaven, is Matthew 6, middle of the chapter-ish. The end of chapter 5 is seek first the kingdom of God, right? And so there's this beautiful call to pursue treasure in heaven and to see more than just an earthly world.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I don't think it's either or. And I don't think it's a matter like, I can't save money because that would be crazy. That's not what Jesus is saying. It's not rules, it's wisdom. And it's seeing the fuller picture of our existence and then living into the fuller picture of our existence. Correct.
I was going to say, when Jesus asked us not to store up treasure on earth, was that literal or about our hearts? Yes. It's the nature of, back to a couple questions ago, it is to seek wisdom and the leading of the Spirit in everything and in all things. There is no taking of the New Testament and just prescribing it and saying, here's your new list of rules to do and then follow it. Because if we took this and at the end too, the person makes the contrast, if we were like the disciples, we'd sell our belongings. You're referencing Acts 2. Now, Acts 2 makes sense in the context of the Holy Spirit moving amongst the people and leading them to do that right there and then.
Well, not just Acts 2, also Acts 4 and Acts 5, because in Acts 4, they continue after the second outpouring of the Holy Spirit, and then that leads to Acts 5 with Ananias and Sapphira.
Correct. And the issue with Ananias and Sapphira is not that they didn't sell everything, so that they deceived that they said they had sold everything.
Yeah, and I think just to also clarify, because you're going there, is... I don't know that there's any instructions other than Jesus talking to the rich young ruler to sell everything and follow him.
Correct. And what I was going to do is, jumping later in Acts, by the time Paul's ministry comes along and the whole of the early church itself, it is clear that there is need for some wealthy amongst them to be a part of the church to facilitate the church's work and its mission. So Paul raises money from people who give to them and has pretty clear sponsors, as did Jesus. To be able to sponsor his ministry. So if those people had sold everything and given it away to the poor, they now don't have the money to sponsor Paul or Jesus himself. So there obviously was some wealth still available to those people to be able to continue to endorse that. At the same time, also, the early church meets in homes, not just any home, often the largest homes available to be able to facilitate the most people, which means those people, those with the most... did not sell their homes in order to do this, and nobody chastises them for it. The selling of everything we see in Acts 2 and 4, and then the continuing conversation in 5, is an example of what the Holy Spirit had put on those people's hearts to respond with, not a prescription of what all must do, or else we don't get the work of the early church to be able to meet or to continue in their mission. The debate comes around when what Jesus is speaking to that is universal for us. Don't you dare put all of your hope and your desire and your faith in things of this world. I'll jump over to, again, Jesus writing in Matthew In Luke 12, he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. He thought to himself, what shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. And he said, this is what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones. There I will store up my surplus again. Then I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take it easy. Eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, you fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then what will you will get from this what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich towards God. It is not, don't store up anything. Jesus does not condemn in this parable the man had saved anything. It is all you did was you weren't also rich towards God in what you were doing. You're trying to just set yourself up by your own hand and by your own provision. And so are there ways that I am saving for our family, for things that come up, for my kids' future, for retirement in the way that the world is built? Yes, I'm doing those things. Is my faith and hope put in those things? Or if all of a sudden that was gone overnight, is my life built in such a way that I'll think, my kids' lives are hooped forever? No, we have provided for them in many different ways, most importantly, pointing them towards Jesus, I hope, in ways that all those things are wonderful and can be wise and are good. Is all of our hope and faith built up in them? I really hope not. Are there ways that that's probably more than I'd like to admit it is? Sure. But Jesus is calling us to have our ultimate hope in him and in our Father in heaven.
Yeah.
Not in these things.
And I think there's also this call to action that is a very literal thing, that we would not store up treasure in heaven.
Correct.
We would naturally store up treasure on earth. And he gives this in the context of talking about prayer and fasting. It's not just in the context of money. Yeah. He actually flows from talking about prayer and then fasting into this store up treasure in heaven. So you think about this idea of storing up treasure in heaven, which does translate, because he concludes this section with you can't serve both God and money, and then leads into the do not worry. But there's this tension, right? Yeah. Where's my focus? What am I going to do? And I think the beauty of this idea of storing up treasure in heaven is the beauty of, is Jesus recognizing and calling them, these are new disciples, and right now, this is going to be work. You are I'm asking you to re-examine all your priorities. I'm asking you to rethink the standards that you have set for success and all of the things, because all of those need to be rethought because they've been shaped by the world and your parents and your peers and all of these other things. And right now, there's going to be hard work. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be really easy to not do it and just keep staying in the course of the way that you've always been. But the beautiful promise in this verse is, if you will start storing up your treasure in heaven, there your heart will be. Mm-hmm. There will be, as you step into these things, this beautiful place where your heart shifts, and you will start loving these things. You will start seeing these things are better. So what will begin by faith will also begin to be seen and become sight. This year, I have decided that I'm going to make my yard really nice. In previous years, I was anti a nice yard. I remember at one point a number of years ago, Laura Lee hired Dr. Green, and I was like, stop it, cancel this right now, because they're coming in, they're fertilizing our grass, and then I have to cut it. And I just don't want anything to do with our yard, because this was back when I was into Spartan races, and I wanted to have time to train, and having to cut my grass twice a week drove me crazy, and I hated it. And I'm like, if our grass is dead, it doesn't grow. This year, I decided I want to have a nice yard. And so I've been doing the work. I was out there pulling weeds out of our gardens and planting some nice plants, putting some mulch down, rehired Dr. Green, working on my grass, doing all the things that I want to do. You know what's happened? Every day when I get home, I get out of my car and I walk around my yard looking at my plants. Because where I stored up treasure, my heart goes.
Right. Yeah.
What began as work still is work, but it's work that I've seen the reward in. Yeah. And as I see the reward, I'm motivated to do more. Yeah. And Jesus is speaking to these people this radical new message about the availability of the kingdom of heaven. And it'd be easy to go, okay, sure, but I got to do all of these things.
Yep.
And what he's saying to them is, start storing up treasure, and your heart will follow.
Yeah, that's so good, Doug. That we've actually talked about money the last few weeks at Young Adults and using this passage, Matthew 6, and going through and just the challenge of like, what is Jesus actually asking, right? And I love that starting point because that is where kind of our young adults have landed. Is this isn't like you can't wait for the future to now be generous. You can't, start storing up now and then think about God later or whatever else. Like all of them came to this consensus that if they start now, then they would be generous people or they'd have a heart after God. And yeah, because you even mentioned that the phrase there, like Jesus actually says, you can't serve money and God. Like you can't have two masters.
Yeah.
So ultimately, that leads us to believe that we're going to be faced with that decision often. I think most people through their daily basis are going to be faced with a decision of, do I serve Jesus or do I serve money? Like who is really in control of these decisions I'm making?
Yeah.
And I think, if you start small and you just work your way towards God, you will see the reward and it'll be better.
And recognize, like I think there's a lot of times that Christians go, well, I don't feel like it. Well, and what Jesus is saying here is do the work.
Yeah.
The heart will follow.
Yeah.
Very good. The next question kind of goes along with this one to some degree. It says, what are your top tips for being less selfish?
Well, one, I'll just throw a few out really fast, kind of blitz style. One, pray. That's really where I think these kind of changes in the fruit of the Spirit are a gift to us that God grants to us. And so ask Him for it. Two, start scheduling, as Doug said. Do the things, put in the work. Put yourself available to serve others. If we've got lots of opportunity at our church, we'll find you a space to serve others. Go volunteer at a soup kitchen. Go on a whatever. There are a million different ways that people need you to give your time to them, organizations and otherwise, and people in your life. Listen for requests. This is something I've just been doing in little ways at my home. When my kids ask me, Dad, will you ... been just aiming to say a lot more yeses. It is very easy to justify being busy and I've got other tasks and things to do, and then those pile up really fast and you've said a whole lot of no's. Try to say more yeses because it's the same selfish bone in my body that will say no to my kids reading a story when I have a job to do that will also say no when it would be giving of my time for somebody in some other situation. It's a muscle to be stretched and to be built. Don't expect that you're going to become Mother Teresa overnight. Build slow ways of saying yes and being less selfish. And I believe it will become more and more natural to you over time. You will never be rid of it.
Does it become more and more natural? I don't know if it becomes natural. I think we get better at doing the hard thing.
And you might enjoy the reward. Like there could be a space where you're like, okay, like I like the feeling of either giving things away or giving of my time or helping people or whatever it is, right? Like I think
it comes more natural.
Maybe you're just a better person than me. I get up every day, and so when I read this, I had a one-word answer: practice. I get up every day, and every day I could totally be a selfish oaf.
Right.
Like that is the way my heart is bent, and every day I could just do what Doug wants all day long. I regularly confess to my wife, I am a narcissist. I am the most selfish person that I've ever met in my life. And she's like, no, you're not. And I'm like, yes, I am. I constantly am choosing the opposite path because there's life in the opposite path and I trust the way of Jesus. But it's never, when you say natural, that's true. To me, that means effortless. And I don't know that it ever has gotten effortless for me. And I'm just sharing my thing. I choose the right path because I believe it's the better path, first of all, but also because I see that is the path to true life. And that my selfishness, and I've experienced this in my own life in seasons and in days and in choices, even in the moment, that the selfish path always leads to regret. And you always have to choose between two pains, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. That is life, right? We constantly don't choose the pain of discipline because we don't have to pay it right now. We'll pay the pain of regret later. And I just don't want to pay the pain of regret. So there's times that I just choose to do that, but it just takes practice. And I think I've gotten better at it. But the analogy I would use when you say it comes natural, for me, would be weightlifting. It doesn't become more natural to lift, to curl a 30-pound dumbbell. My muscles get stronger, right? And so for me, that's the analogy I would. Now, I'm not saying you have to have the same experience as me, but that's my thought. And so my really straightforward answer would be practice, and then building on that. That would include prayer. That would include listening to the sensitivity, like the voice of the Holy Spirit when he's putting his finger on areas of my life that I feel totally justified in engaging in. And he's like, but your relationship with this thing is changing and it's becoming something that is out of proportion to the other areas of your life. And then on a very practical level, I think of examine your life for the things that cause selfishness. Put your phone down because we don't see the people around us because we're so preoccupied with our need to be constantly entertained. And that is inherently selfishness. And so if we never get our eyes off of something to entertain us, I mean, you go into Airdrie registries now and they got a TV so that people can stand in line, they can watch a TV. And like, we cannot not be entertained. And that at its core just promotes a constant and reinforces a selfishness that do some of the practical things that would allow you to even begin to see beyond yourself. So, and I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying my experience has been different than yours.
And I understand all that you're saying, and I would even disagree for your story. And I know that's probably pretty bold of me to do. I've watched how you give your time and effort to others, and how, unless you're a really good actor, that has become much more just who you are, and you're willing to be there for somebody without even having to seemingly think about it. In the same way, like the easiest place for me to just express it, because it's where I spend more of my time than anywhere else, is with my family. It gets a lot easier and more natural to just crave the time of doing what my kids would desire because I put in that hard work. In the same way that, back to the exercise thing, I think in your analogy, you're already at the gym, so to speak, to lift the weights. But getting there, at one point for me, that was a real hard, I had to really think about it and choose discipline. Over time, it becomes something that is just, I anticipate to be doing in my day because it is good for me. And then when I get there, I might have to push myself a little bit more. And there's still hard days to convince myself to do it. I have watched in your life, and I think in mine, and Blake, I'll there too. Doug was debating with me for the moment. You may be more aware of even smaller and smaller corners of the selfishness in your life that you never saw before. But I would say overall, there's a lot of ways you're showing up for others without even having to think about it, in it becoming much more natural because of Jesus in you. Won't give you all the credit. It becomes more natural of his work in you to respond in that way towards others. And so practice only leads to becoming more of something. And so that doesn't, in the same way an athlete, you begin training towards something. We're talking about different hockey leagues today. The kid in junior B can crush me in hockey. Nowhere near that. But he still, because he's done the work to become that, sees how far he has to go to be able to play at the NHL level. He is much more naturally there and has chosen to get there and has put in the work and now can comfortably live in that world. In the same way, I think selfishness, the more we spend time becoming less selfish, at the same time, we are also acutely more aware of how much more selfishness is rooted in our lives than we ever would have thought or imagined at the beginning of the journey. But that's not to disqualify how much less selfish we have grown from one point while knowing how much further in the journey we have to go.
Yeah. You guys have had a couple of practical ones. I really liked your put your phone down, because I think that's brilliant. Like, if you just literally put your phone down, you will notice other people, which would be a great start.
Well, the first thing you'll notice is how quickly you get bored.
Yeah.
Right? And you'll want to pick up your phone in a minute.
Yeah. So
but
then
don't
go do something else. Yeah, Yeah, so you have to notice other people. And I like that about not being on the phone. But I think of just the practices that most people have, and especially if you consider yourself selfish or you think of others who you think are selfish, which might be easier than pointing the finger at yourselves, right? I just think of my teenage kids, or when my kids were teenagers. If we allowed them to do more and more and more things that they wanted to do, such as screen time, alone time, whatever it is, when you'd ask them now to change direction, like, hey, we're going to go somewhere, or can you help your brother out, or could you do the dishes? They just lose their mind, right? And I have turned that on myself and gone, yeah, that's exactly what happens to me. The longer I go, like whether it's an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, doing my own selfish thing, as soon as someone asks of my time or asks me to do something, I'm angry. And I'm like, ugh, right? So I think back to the practicing, you actually have to like start at the beginning and not let yourself get so far down the selfish track. Another piece of advice, I have no idea if this person's married or not that's asking this question. I had my best friend growing up through high school, lived a pretty charmed young adult life. Like, went to university, got a great job, had lots of money, moved away, and was doing everything that I think any young adult, especially one that likes hockey, would like to do. He phoned me, I don't know, 8-10 years later after all this, and he says, I think I need to get married. And I remember it just being a weird conversation. I was like, what do you mean you need to get married? He's like, I am so selfish. And he just started talking about his day, like what the decisions he made as a single guy living by himself in Los Angeles every day. He's like, I need a spouse. And he did. He got married in the next couple of years, and we've had conversations since. He's like, be careful what you wish for. But I just think, like, honestly, if you have a spouse already, maybe pay attention to him or her. And if you have kids, pay attention to them, because that will help your selfishness not be so selfish anymore.
You already talked about either this podcast or the last one this weekend, the last in our series, the disciple does the things. Do the things.
Correct.
Just, you want to be less selfish, whether it comes more natural or whether you get stronger, however you want to define it. Do it. Start doing it and just keep doing it.
That's a great question, though. I love that you're even asking that question. I think a lot of us selfish people don't even worry about it. So, I'm glad that you're thinking about that. Next question. I'm not trying to generalize, but lately I've been thinking and seeing a lot about these mega churches and some of the things they do in the name of Jesus, but it seems like the performance is more important than the teaching. Would you consider some of these practices to be performative Christianity, like drone shows on Easter, excessive fog and lights at worship times? It seems like more of a show than a teaching. I'd appreciate any perspective on this.
Crack that question with 4 minutes left.
As long as the fog and lights aren't excessive.
Just the same amount that Jesus had as he gave the Sermon on the Mount. There was one point I would have been entirely condemning of all of those things. I don't know if I can anymore.
Really?
I may disagree with them. I may have frustration and much caution around them. I believe there to be many people who are, one, a product of their environment, and so they're pursuing what they have been modeled and doing it as genuinely as possible to be able to invite something through the means that they are aware of. And so I can't fault that person for using the language and tools at their disposal that they have been shown and never had a counter position offered to them as the first starting point of where I think this can begin in a noble and intentional place without awareness. 2, I will refuse to personally judge that those can't be means and can't lead to fruit, whether that be through or in spite of human effort. I will give it that. Where there are churches that I could easily, I won't name them, try to write off at one moment just for their size or their budgets or certain parts of what they do. And then I watch how generous they are with percentages of their budgets that go to either direct ministry and work of others with the poor, or what they are willing to do is take their resources and give them away. Anything they do, they give them to other churches and make sure others benefit from them. That I could quickly write off because of size, it can't be good. At some point, though, I hope that the majority of people, if not all people, would come to know Jesus. We're going to need some larger organization to be able to do that. And so I went to Passion Conference a number of years ago. This was in 2018 or 2019. And I, at that point, would have been much more skewed towards the end of big things don't count. And they broke everybody into small groups for the whole weekend. After every session, you would go to a spot, and I was in one just for leaders, and I met with the same 6 people for the whole weekend. It took a lot of effort and systems to make that happen, but that was impactful and genuine, and I kept in contact with those people for a while after, and we stoked one another onto things in our different contexts all over North America. There was fruit that came from that. Would I necessarily advocate that the medium is the best way forward? Probably not. It's not what I would recommend. Does that mean I don't believe that it can work and be making genuine disciples? To a certain part, I'll be very, very cautious, like radioactive material. I know we've used that towards money at different point. Is all radioactive material bad? For anybody to handle without gloves and proper precautions? Yes. Does that mean is it always negative? I can't get that far. And so I've seen some things that I really have hope that God is working in and through and in spite of some of these things that I can't write them off.
I would be in the same place as you and have the same confession that years ago, not that many years ago maybe, I would have had the same judgmental attitude. But I think I don't want to judge everybody because they're different than me.
Yeah.
Because I would judge people on both sides of me.
Yeah.
And then all I'm doing is saying that I'm right.
Correct.
I also think that there's this place of just recognizing that different people are going to be reached in different ways, 100%, and that I don't know the heart behind what is being done. And so would I do it that way? No. Would our church do it that way? No. But that's why you come to our church versus go to a different church. We're reaching a different group of people than another group of people. Is there times when it gets excessive and times when it's out of balance? Absolutely. But are we the center of the balance point? No. Yeah. And so this is where it's like, man, I don't know. I did that pilgrimage last year, and it ends in Santiago at a cathedral, not a church. It is crazy. And you literally stand outside of this thing and you're like, this is loony. Like it's so incredible. Then you go inside and you're like, oh, outside doesn't compare in any way. Yeah. And my first thought was, man, this is so excessive. But then I was like, maybe. But there's also this reality of the fact that for 800 years, people have taken this pilgrimage and walked to this point and then got to this point and connected with God in this spot. Does every town need a cathedral comparable to the one in Santiago? No. Like that's not at all what I'm advocating for. But can I point the finger at the Catholic Church because they built that there and say, that was terrible and you were totally wrong and your heart was wrong and every motive was wrong and God can't use it at all? No, because God used it in my life last year. Yeah. And I still think about some of the things that I experienced on that pilgrimage. I still reflect on some of the truths that I took away from it, and it's still impacting my life. Yeah. So I understand the struggle with when we see things being used excessively, but I will go back to the woman breaking the alabaster jar on Jesus' feet. Yeah. And the disciples being like, how dare she? Yeah. And Jesus being like, I'm going to defend her. And her story is going to be told for the rest of time. Yep. People will talk about this beautiful offering. Yeah. Like there's something beautiful there in that offering that is excessive and is exorbitant and is in a place that is going to be judged by others. Yeah. And yet... because it came from this heart of love for Christ was accepted with gratitude and received beautifully. Yeah. And so I look at that and I'm like, there may be people who are doing things that I would deem excessive that God just smiles upon and is like, I love this. And there may be people who are living a frugal life and giving all of the money to the poor, and God smiles on that and goes, I love this. Yeah. There may be people living a frugal life because they're lazy and God's not pleased. There may be people who are doing things that are excessive and God's not pleased. Yeah. I understand the struggle with what we see. Yeah. And I think there's a difference between saying, not the way I would do it, and I'm going to just arbitrarily, from what I've seen in a video clip, say something is wrong.
Totally. I think in each of those extremes that you were listing, there is still probably more to be given to God, right? Like, why would we ever think of limiting our worship and declaration of who God is? Like, cathedrals were all built to leave this awe of who God was and who it was behind it. But each thing can also be done out of selfishness. Are there church buildings that have built just to show, look how awesome that church has it together because they built this awesome, cool, fancy building?
Or look how awesome the pastor is because he led this building project.
Correct. And at the same time, I'm incredibly thankful that churches have, like the building we're sitting in, though at lots of times we complain, people gave faithfully to be able to build this thing and took time and effort and finances. And we talk about the future home of our church, like thinking there's a multi-million-dollar project ahead of us. What can we do for people in the community? Sure, but where would we gather and continue to gather the people who were able to make that thing happen? It's this tension of to what end and to what purpose and to whose glory can always be done, because in the art that was done in the medieval times towards God and all these pieces, these are still leaving us inspired by him. We're happy to take a song, though, and somebody pours out their heart for Jesus and puts it on there, and there's these beautifully artistic things, but didn't cost anything, so we're happy to sell that and repeat it over and over again. But don't you dare take money and make a movie. I think there's even been moments where Christians have been like, why would you spend the money to make that movie, to talk about this thing? Because we pour out to express and to do these things. There's no right answer. There's no prescription. Constantly coming back to, what is the fruit of it? Have these cathedrals pointed people to Jesus? Yeah. Have church buildings been built on corrupt budgets? Yeah. Has art been done to beautifully point towards Jesus? Yeah. Has art been done just to point towards, look at how good that artist is, but we sprinkled Jesus on top? Yeah. Everywhere in between, back to the selfishness question. Why? Why did we do this thing? And then even when it has been done wrong, I will also give it this. So often I'm thankful for this because it's happened in my life. Jesus works in spite of my selfishness being put on display for me to preach or to pastor or whatever. And then even still, his voice gets heard in spite of mine being put forward in my efforts. I can't judge. Again, would I prescribe all the same things in drone shows? No. Does God work in spite of it? Absolutely, and I'm thankful for it. And this is the conversation Christians will and have had and will have until Jesus returns.
The story of the prodigal son, I remember reading a book a number of years ago, said it's mislabeled. We call it, I mean, depending on your translation, there's a lost coin, the lost sheep, the lost coin, and then the lost son. Yeah. And oftentimes, because the three are together in the Gospel of Luke, oftentimes it's the lost sheep, the lost coin, and then the prodigal son. Yeah. And I remember hearing reading in a book that it's mislabeled. It shouldn't be the prodigal son. It should be the prodigal father. Because prodigal does not mean lost. Prodigal means excessively generous and wasteful. And we do that because of the son, because he got this inheritance and he then just goes and spends it, right? So we call him a prodigal. But this book was talking about how excessively wastefully generous the father is, because the father gives the son this inheritance at tremendous self-sacrifice. He is exceedingly generous to the son and gives generously. And that
and on his return does the same thing, even more so.
Yes. And as the father is that generous in that way, so also is God exceedingly generous. And I think that there are beautiful places and pictures where people are doing things excessively that just make God smile. And that doesn't mean it needs to be done everywhere excessively. It means we can go, that's cool that this person had such a heart to do this thing, that they created this beautiful thing in pouring out of a love offering to God. Like that is super cool. But yes, to go back to what you said, sometimes is it done with the wrong heart and it's completely corrupt from the beginning? Absolutely. Yeah. But there are pastors who are in ramshackle churches who are preaching to crowds of 20 and there's no production value to anything, who it's just as displeasing to God as the pastor who is building this giant ministry that is basically a kingdom to themselves.
Yep. And everything in between. Yeah.
Beauty. We're pretty much out of time, but I was just going to add to that and just say, like, I think the danger for me and probably for all of us is being in that scene, Doug, you alluded to, and so you called being judgmental of the others. Like, I got it right. Yeah. My church does it perfectly. My pastoring does this, right? Or whatever.
The pendulum always swings.
And I'm like, the moment I'm doing that, I'm not any better or wrong completely than any of the others. So, yeah.
So Blake's going to have a fog machine the next time he preaches.
It's going to be awesome.
But not excessive.
Not excessive.
One fog machine, not two.
Yeah. How do you gauge that? Where's the excess mark?
You got to go by height.
Oh, okay.
Right? Yeah. It can't be taller than your waist. I believe that's the biblical mandate.
Yeah. Interesting.
I'm going to have a budget meeting after this if Blake's applying for
There's going to be some AER. I just can feel it. All right. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Inverted Orthodoxy Podcast. And we hope you enjoyed the journey. Hopefully we gave you some things to think about and to just roll around in your faith and grow deeper in it. We encourage you to do that. We also encourage you to visit our website, invertedorthodoxy.com. Send in more questions and rate and review and like us everywhere that you watch and listen to this podcast. See you guys next time.
See ya.